keeps me injury free because of the training that we've done. So I've just never stopped, and I never stopped that methodology. Who is this dude slamming these? This 225 against the squat bar. This guy is, he's out of this world. And I jumped the highest I've ever jumped at 38. These are things that I've been able to put to the test. I may get some hate for this, but people are just misinformed. You know what I'm saying? Just ill-informed. They really are.
Guys, Dr. Joel Seedman here. We have a pretty exciting interview and guest on for today. This is my co-host, Jonathan Moore, and our special guest is Julian Williams. Julian, great to have you here, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, we've talked about something like this for a while, and you know, I'm going to let you dive into your background a bit more, but we've known each other for 10, maybe getting close to 11 years now, and we've had a lot of deep conversations about training, about fitness, about athletics, and you know, we've also had a lot of good laughs over the years. So pretty cool connection we've had, but I want you to just give the audience a little bit more detail about your background, because you have such a unique background in my opinion. I mean, Jonathan, you being an athlete as well, but Julian, you know, you played professional sports, you played for the Falcons, so I don't want to steal your thunder.
Sure.
I'm going to let you kind of jump into some of your overall background for the audience here.
Yeah. So again, I'm Julian Williams. You know, ultimately I've played football my entire life. I've been in the gym industry my entire life. My dad, since I was born, has owned a gym. It hasn't always been Georgia Sports Performance, which is where we're currently at, but you know, it's been a blessing, and I've been around a lot of athletes, you know, my entire life. So my two brothers played college football. They didn't necessarily get to the NFL like I was able to. Obviously, that was a blessing. But it was a situation where I worked hard every single day, got to rub shoulders with a lot of pros, you know, that played for the Falcons, that got to train with him. And then, you know, I was like, what's the secret? They go, there is no secret. Just work hard.
Hard work.
And so I was like, all right, well, I got it. Let's rock and roll.
I can definitely attest to the hard work component, because you busted your butt more than almost any athlete I've seen. So it's pretty cool. Like I mentioned, and as you alluded to as well, you have a pretty cool background. It's unique, and it's unique in the sense that you played professional sports and collegiate, obviously. You're a trainer. You also come from a family of trainers. So you've been exposed to a lot of different training methodologies. Your dad's a trainer. Your brothers have kinesiology degrees. You also have your kinesiology background with the bachelor's in exercise science. So you have this very kind of like all-encompassing exercise science background, so to speak, not just the science itself, but also, you know, the practical application. Tell us a little bit more about how you've used the 90-degree method, because we've obviously used that in your training, and how it's kind of impacted your overall training as well as what you do with your own clients.
Sure. Well, I want to take a step back, because you said it right there. I started to implement the 90-degree once you and I got together, and you started working together and came within the GSP. It's been amazing, and I attest a lot of my performance to the 90-degree stuff, my balance, the proprioception, just getting everything locked in. And I've just not been quite as explosive before I was doing the 90-degree. So just to kind of dive into what we do, everything that you talk about is about the basics, making sure that your feet are locked in, making sure your hips, your shoulders, your chin's nice and tall. And again, I know you're going to dive into more of this stuff as we go along too, but it's all the basics that have allowed me to do some pretty cool things, and it keeps me injury free.
Exactly.
And that's been the best thing. I think that's been the most notable thing. And you and I have conversations about that all the time, which is I don't remember the last time I've had an injury because of the training that we've done. So it's been, I think we started training in, what is this now, 10 years, 11 years ago. And I've just never stopped. And I've never stopped that methodology of 90-degree, because when I go back, I feel aches and pains, and when I do 90-degree, I'm locked in.
Yeah, it's something we've talked about too, that we've seen with our athletes as well. So and in our own body, so we can definitely relate. Before we get more into the science, into some of the kinesiology, I want to take people back to that one day with Genghis Grill. You remember what I'm talking about, right?
I gotta ask, what is the Genghis Grill?
Genghis Grill.
I have no idea.
It was just a little restaurant
that
they're unfortunately closed now. But
Yep.
let me give a bit of let me set the stage a little bit, and I'll let you kind of dive in. But basically, this is about like 10 years ago, and I had just kind of arrived at GSP, and I was working with you, working with your dad, and Taylor Heineke was there. He just got, I think, taken by the Vikings.
That's correct.
And we had a big dinner, and you guys knew a little bit about my methods, but
not to that extreme.
You didn't know the full extent. So we had this big dinner, and afterwards, I'm like, hey, we got to go do sprints. We got to shuttle these nutrients to our muscles. And you guys were like, wait, whoa, what?
We're like, okay, like, Joel's funny. We know he likes to lock his.
Did you guys do
them?
We did sprints, dude. We did sprint. They were
in the parking lot.
In the parking lot at Genghis Grill.
Like you just see Joel's head pass over the top of the cars, and he's running a full blown like 50, 60 yards, and he's like, "We're gonna burst." And we were like,
I ate so much of that meal. I was like, you know what? I gotta shuttle these nutrients. I can't let all that glucose sit in my bloodstream. All those.
How did you guys react to that?
We were like, at first we were laughing, and then I was like, we're doing it then.
Yeah, we're doing it.
I was like, I gotta see what this is about.
Yeah.
And he had already explained to us before, because I remember this. Key part was like, you shouldn't be hurting yourself if you're locked in. If your form's locked in, you should be able to run like. He always would make the analogy, does a cheetah stretch before it goes and gets its prey, or if something, you need to be ready to go. And I'm like, okay.
Well, that's kind of.
I don't think that's how it works, because I'm used to 30, 45 minute dynamics.
Yep.
I'm sweating in my warm up.
Yep.
Now let's go, because you're warm. Obviously with your sports background as well, playing with Sanford and the whole deal. It's like you have to get your body warmed up. I'm not quite there. Let's keep going. He's like, we're doing these full blown sprints.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to bring this up.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a funny story and just something, a little extra on the side. It actually has pertinence to what we're talking about, because when I tell athletes that they need to be able to have the ability to sprint cold, that they should be able to sprint without warming up, when they first come in, before we start training, they look at me like I have two heads. They're like, are you kidding me? Like, if I did that right now, I would pull something, I would tear something. And I posted this topic on social media multiple times, and I'm always surprised how many people are stunned and give the same reaction. They're like, there's no way you'll pull a hamstring, you'll tear something. But it's almost like a basic human skill that we should have if we're healthy humans. Because if you think about, like, if you're getting mugged or you have to go chase someone, you can't be like, hey, hold on, let me stretch.
Warm up.
Let's warm up. It's like, no, we need to have the ability as humans, high-functioning humans,
to
be able to go into a cold sprint. Now, I'm not saying that's optimal, and that's not going to be the optimal speed, but you should be able to do it without
that in your repertoire.
It should be in your repertoire. If your body is healthy, if it's not healthy, if you train with extreme range of motion, you're probably going to injure something.
It's a great indication of where you're at with your muscle function.
Exactly. Right? And when I posted that article several years ago, I asked you, I was like, hey, for the article, can you do a few sprints for me? And, we videoed you, and you're like, yeah, sure, I can do that. But most athletes, they're like, nah, I can't do that cold. Exactly. You were immediately on that, no hesitation, because you knew your body could handle it. That one, the Genghis Grill one, that's always a good fun one.
Yeah.
People ask me a lot how much my methods have changed, especially over the last decade, and I think you're a good person to talk about that, because you've seen my methods firsthand for around 10 years now. And I want you to just talk a little bit about what you've noticed with the methods. Have they changed? Have they become less strict, more strict? Have they become more stringent? What have you noticed?
Yeah. A lot of more simplicity as the years have gone.
Yeah.
I think you and I had that conversation not too long ago. It's about making sure that the neck is, pushed all the way back, right? To lock in the shoulders, exactly, to get this posture right. And that ends up making everything else. Now, it's easier said than done, of course, because I've done 10 years of it. However, locking your feet in and doing the fundamentals of getting all your body just in the right place, you can perform the movements that you see that you're like, okay, I'm on Joel's page. I know these are movements I can't do, but I'm going to, watch it for fun type deal. It's like, no, you're capable of doing this. Everybody's capable of doing this. It's just, it takes repetition. But, you've gone from doing a lot of, RDLs. You're always big about hitting all the muscle groups.
All the movement patterns.
All the movement patterns. And that's been a huge, kind of eye opener for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so as you said, I've done that with my clients as well.
Well, I think too, the interesting thing is, and you've noticed this because you've been with me for 8 years now, right?
That's right. Yep.
And I've just noticed this with my own training, and my clients have noticed this too, the ones that have been with me for a bit longer, is that the training, like you said, has become more simplified, and it's become more stringent in a sense that we're adhering even more to the science. It's like we knew from the beginning when you started training with me. We talked about posture immediately. We talked about the feet. We talked about keeping the core tight. We talked about, hitting those roughly 90-degree joint angles. But now, as we kind of proceed through time here, it's not that we have to have good posture. Posture has to be perfect. Yeah. Feet can't just be, relatively straight and kind of activated. No, they need to be perfectly straight. And, those 90-degree positions, when you do the movement right, it's not around 90 or, 100 degrees, 80. It's like almost pretty much right smack dab at 90 degrees when you adhere to the appropriate movements and when you do it right. And so I think that's the big thing. And that's even, correcting small things in your form over the last, year or two. It's just those subtle things that we talked about, but we're actually adhering to the science more specifically and more stringently because those are scientific facts. Like, why would we not want to adhere to them?
Right.
So, and I think you've done a great job in your own training with that. And Jonathan, you've done the same. It's honestly, the longer you train, the more you have to do that. Because you've noticed that, like, your body, as it gets a little bit older, maybe a little more wear and tear, you have to be more stringent with the method. So,
and like you said, you guys were talking about the simplicity.
Yes.
When you do those corrections and you put that in, it applies to all the movement patterns. So then it's like all these small nitty-gritty things. Oh, I was struggling with this on the lunge. I was struggling on this on the shoulder press. It's like those kind of dwindle down when you apply those basic corrections to all the movements. So then those very subtle adjustments you make just become less and less, and you get better at advancing in those. So 100%.
No, I mean, this goes back to the posture thing. And again, it's like when you lock in the posture, you lock in the feet, you lock in the core, everything else follows. It's like
you
a puzzle.
skip so many small detailed steps that a lot of people will teach you and talk about with like my shoulders and my position here and this here. It's like, set the posture straight.
Yep.
That's right.
And boom, look at how much of a difference that makes. Then you can go down from there.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the simplicity point you mentioned.
Right.
It's like, okay, instead of having to give someone 15 cues how to squat,
Exactly.
just teach them how to lock in their posture, lock in their core, lock in their feet, and guess what? Their squat's going to be pretty darn good, and you're not going to have to go through all those extra steps. Like you actually bypass a ton of time. So, when we first started training, it used to take 30 minutes, maybe even a few sessions to get you in the right position for the squat. Now we can do it with our athletes within 2-3 minutes because we've simplified it so much, but we focus on the most critical points of human movement, like the posture, like the core, like the feet. So, and you're doing a better and better job of that, I feel like, as the years have progressed, which kind of leads to the next point of I want to talk about foot mechanics.
Okay.
Because this is something that you've struggled with a little bit. It's not, honestly, compared to a lot of athletes, it's not bad. But if we had to point out some of your weaknesses or an area that you struggle with a little bit more, it's your foot mechanics, particularly your left foot. And again, everyone has their own weaknesses. Everyone has their own imbalances. My right hip, my right shoulder, it's hip, it can be low back. So we all have our weaknesses that we have to work on. But talk about the left foot for you, which is kind of one of your weaknesses, and what happens in your body when you don't address that or you get a little bit lackadaisical with your activation and firing in that area.
Sure. Well, right out the gate, my foot wants to, pronate inside. I mean, it's just collapsing. As I see my other one has a nice arch to it. I'm really driving that big toe in. I'm getting to the outside couple toes on the right. And that was almost automatic when we first started.
Right.
And then the left was just like, okay, come on, And ironically, and you and I talk about deficiencies and having little, that is the side, many, many moons later, I tore that hamstring.
Yeah.
And, and I've done an MCL as well, and that was after the compensation of the hammy. But, I mean.
But even that low back stuff you were dealing with not too long ago, like it all kind of stemmed back from that foot and going up the kinetic chain.
That's right.
And it's like, okay, that whole left side of your body was torquing and rotating out, and it's the posture.
Exactly. So you have that problem with your back, your hamstring. It's like, oh, we fix this with the hamstring, fix this with the back. Right. It's like, let's take a step back, get those main adjustments we just talked about. You're going to bypass so many of those steps because, boom, locking the feet. It's going to prevent a lot of those malfunctions.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in assessment. And as trainers, we know that, we can look at someone and how they move, and we can over-assess so easily. And we can say, oh, well, the reason why they're compensating this way, we could come up with 20 different reasons. And this is one of the main reasons I don't do excessive assessments like I used to. I used to take 2 hours to do assessments.
Right.
Now it's like, hey, let me watch the person move for about 5 minutes. And then after that, we got to teach them the foundations. Go back to the basics. Because once you do that, it's essentially going to cover everything else. So, no, I think this is, and again, with you correcting those issues with like your feet and your hips, it's just very cool to see how your body responds. But when you don't, you pay the price. You see the ramifications. And that's for my body, that's for your body. And everybody has their own unique individual compensation patterns, and we all have to address them, whatever they are. And when we don't, bad things happen. When we stay on top of them, our body stays healthy.
That's right.
So that's now we talked earlier about the combine training.
Yeah.
Because you've participated in some of the combine work, okay, as an athlete yourself.
Right.
And you also helped with some of the combine training. The reason I want to bring this up is because, and this even applies to you because you obviously did some of the combine training in college, preparing for like the 225 test and whatnot.
Not the NFL combine.
No, but I'm just clear. No, I know. But
I was good, but not the NFL.
But in college, they wanted you to do certain tests here and there.
For sure.
And just like we had to practice the 225 test and get you ready for the NFL combine, but we used the 90-degree method primarily as our main training methodology. We didn't say, hey, you got to touch your chest for your 225 test, so we're going to do all your bench press, touch and go to the chest. No, we hardly did that. We used it mainly as a test. We periodically checked once every 7 to 14 days. Honestly, it was probably closer to the 14-day mark. And talk to the audience about what you noticed with your body. Were you at a detriment or not?
No, not at all. Just to kind of give some context, I believe I did 18 on 225. So as a receiver, at 5'9.5", 5'10", 180, 70 pounds, that's pretty good.
Exactly.
So, but it actually, I wasn't a believer in it at first. I remember we talked about, I was like, Joel, I don't know if you know what we're doing, because we got to go all the way down there.
Right.
And, you watch the pro day and you watch the actual one in Indy, and you're like, they're going down and they're extending and locking their elbows. They're big on that. And I thought that I was going to be weaker going in because we had only done 90.
Right.
But you taught us how to, really open up the chest, lock the form in, make sure your elbows are nice and tight. Hit 90, activate the back, allow the back to wrap around the spine and explode out of the hole.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay, I'm doing a lot of reps at 90, and we're pausing for like 2 or 3 seconds at the bottom. You would make us, maybe longer in some cases. And I was like, I think I'm going to be good for 225. And we got to our little mock test before I left for FIU and did my pro day at FIU. And we had done, I want to say 15 or 16. I didn't want to burn it out. And you were like, don't do as many as you think you can. Don't deplete it because you're about to leave.
Right.
And I was like throwing up 15 reps easily. I was like, this is crazy. And I didn't think, just like a lot of folks do, a lot of your followers as well, that think the ATG squats there's more power there. It's just, especially as an athlete, what I can attest to playing football is you don't get down all the way butt into the heels to then explode and tackle somebody.
Right.
Or drive through somebody. Doesn't work.
Right.
So that's too much time. The guy's already run around you.
Exactly.
So you've got to explode from a 90-degree angle
100%.
or even a little bit higher, 120 in some cases, and then shoot your hips through like a hinge, like an RDL at the top, snap your hips through and go through a person. Right. So in order to do that, you need to be training 90 degree. It's just folks don't realize that this is the most optimal way of training.
Exactly. Yeah. I think your number that you were hitting before we started that was about 12.
Yeah, I think it was lower.
Yeah, it might have been
10,
lower.
11, yeah.
So, and that was within about 2.5 month period.
Yep.
So
Just
to have a 6, 7, or no, I guess it was maybe 8 if you're saying it's 10 that you started at. So almost doubled your number of reps. We hardly touched any reps under 90 degrees. But like you said, you get so used to these efficient, very intense contractions. It's almost like touching your chest. It's like, wow, this is easy. I just have to have a slightly lazier firing pattern and let my muscles relax a little bit.
Exactly.
This is almost easy compared to doing the 90-degree method, because also the 90-degree method, it maximizes your strength gain so that now you're stronger in all positions, whether it's below 90, above 90, because that's where we have the most activation. You notice that with you too.
For sure. And in addition to that, I think just your neuromuscular advances.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, then when you have to do the reps all the way down, you don't have to be as tight throughout the whole rep.
Exactly.
So then from your neuromuscular perspective, it makes everything
period.
easier, right? And then your lats have been more cued from those exercises. It's going to help propel your chest more, so on and so forth.
It's almost like, if you know how to sprint at 100%, sprinting at 80, 85% is easy. But if you've only sprinted at 80 or 85%, you try to go 100%, that's going to be tough.
Exactly.
So I think that's a good analogy of
great analogy
of how you saw
I
improvements.
just remember going, when we were first doing it, and I hadn't learned the form yet. I'm rolling out of the top of the bench, rolling out like a lot of us do. You just whatever it takes, get it off my chest. You're kind of, as they call them, the sternum crushers, and just drive them off your chest. But you're using your shoulders, your neck. I mean, you feel like I need a massage or a chiropractor after I'm done with this. But I was able to get to 10, which was the number I was hitting before. And then you taught us midway, extend the arms.
Yep.
Take a breath.
Take a breath. Yep. Exactly.
Like, all right, here we go. Go time.
And
I was able to go get another 8.
Exactly.
One at a time. And I was like, man, this is...
Well, that's the other thing we've noticed too, is that when guys do their combine training and they do a ton of reps where they're touching their chest over that 2-month period, their joints are shot, their tendons are fried, and they have so much inflammation. Their nervous system actually starts to shut the movement down, so they perform oftentimes pretty poorly at their pro day or their combine testing. And so, with the 90-degree method, your body's so healthy, it's like, oh shoot, this is going to be no problem for me, a no-brainer. It's cool to see the 90-degree method pay off for those tests where you actually do have to go below 90, because as you said, every time an athlete steps onto the field for that performance or for that game, there are going to be scenarios where they had to get into deeper positions. And it's not like our athletes are getting injured. If anything, our athletes have exponentially lower injury rates compared to other people. So, if this theory was right about, if you don't train past 90, the moment you get into a deeper position, you're going to get injured. It's like, no, because our athletes, that's not happening. If anything, their injury rates are lower. So, it's a cool thing to see.
How I like to think about it, do good to be prepared for the bad.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Good.
It's a high level, very basic thing, but it's like, I think a lot of people miss that. It's like, let's prepare our body to do the good, because those things you do in your sport, those are not therapeutic things.
No,
so when you keep tearing it up to do the stuff that's going to tear you up a little bit anyway,
it's going to go eventually. Exactly.
Interesting. We talked a lot about this. You're big into experimenting with your body, trying different methods, whether it's nutrition protocols, supplement protocols, even water. You're always talking about, hey, I got to try this water, that water. But you're also, you've been big into trying other training methods and just seeing what works, and kind of always coming back to 90 and using the 90-degree principle. And I don't blame you at all, because I love to explore other training methods while still adhering to the fundamentals. And you kind of had a period a few years ago where you went to higher volume, a lot more reps. You weren't quite as strict and as stringent with your form and as precise, but you were still doing kind of the 90-degree thing. But what did you notice with your body that caused you to kind of go back to really those intense 90-degree eccentric isometrics, smooth and controlled? Talk to us a little bit about that.
What's funny is it's not funny, because it was the opposite of funny when it happened, but twice, the 2 times that I messed up my back was when I was training and not really adhering so much to the 90-degree protocol.
Right.
And I see it when I look at myself with my shirt off in the mirror. My shoulders are rolled forward a little bit more, kind of as if you would do like barbell shrugs or dumbbell shrugs, and you're kind of just beefed up, like you're flexing. You kind of stay that way, a little bit of forward tilt. And as a receiver, you stand in that position a little bit as well, where you're hunched over just a little to block your chest out from the defensive back. And I really started to have, this shoulder here, this pec here, this hamstring here, this ankle here. I was like, okay.
And it's not like your form was horrible. You were pretty much doing, from an external perspective, visually, it was pretty similar.
Right.
it was just a little bit sloppy. Just got a little bit out of sorts. That's all it takes.
That's right.
Especially once you start getting strong, you've been training for years, you got a lot of experience under your belt. It's like the training has to get more precise, can't get less precise. Correct. Even doing the same level of precision, it's like, no, you're either going backwards and getting worse
forward.
or you're getting better. Right. And
basically no middle ground.
There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground with this. Yeah, exactly. And I think it was just interesting for me to see that happening with you. Like, oh man, this is hurting a little bit. That's hurting. And just small things. It wasn't huge. So that was interesting. Talked a little bit about this with the 225 test and making sure that you had the strength in those deeper positions, which you obviously did. Talk a little bit more about your mobility if you feel like the 90-degree method has impacted it one way or another, or do you feel like you've lost mobility because you haven't trained deep, which is kind of the common criticism. So,
not at all.
Yeah.
I've had, if anything, I've gotten more mobility now, and and I don't want to dive into a topic before we get to it, but even the stretching and rolling thing, I wasn't big on that. I didn't really. And I think that's just from an athlete standpoint. Everybody can kind of resonate with this. They don't want to stretch. Coach tells them to. Make sure you roll. Make sure you do this. Make sure you do that. And then you and I, got together and we started locking it. And I was like, maybe for the wrong reasons. Realistically, I was like, I like Joel's protocol. There's no stretching. Here we go.
Cut out a lot of stuff.
And it was like, but I'm not getting hurt, and I can do everything I need to do. I can get past, like you said, a deeper range of motion. If I need to. Playing receiver, and Jonathan's the guy coming to hit me. I'm getting folded like a lawn chair, and sometimes with my legs open and I'm being folded into my lap.
Yeah.
And it's like, in theory, like you said, if I'm doing 90 degree, I should tear both my hamstrings.
Exactly, according to the critics and the haters.
Exactly.
Right. It's like, oh man, the moment that happens, your body should just explode and all your joints are come undone. But that doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen.
Exactly.
And almost more kind of grace and agileness as I jump off of 1 foot a lot to go get a ball and turn my body in the air, and I've become more explosive to do it, and things are just more locked in. I'm not jumping with my shoulders back or something like that, but I'm able to, like Jonathan said, I'm doing the good in the weight room, where if I come down on that leg maybe not quite right, I'm good.
Yeah.
It's not that one, it's waiting for that one extra tweak, and then you're done.
Exactly.
And you blow something out.
Well, a healthy body can handle those bad positions.
That's right.
When it periodically happens. A body that's torn up has a lot of inflammation, micro tears. It's on the verge. It's like all it takes is that final straw. Boom, it's done.
Right.
For sure. And it is with a lot of people too. They get an injury, they do something. It's like, oh, it's that's how I injured myself. It's like, well, in the sense that it was the last straw.
Right.
But there's been a buildup going all along because of the poor mechanics and stuff like that. So.
Interesting. No, it's a good point. I mean, it's kind of, we were talking about this a little bit the other day with just activation. We've talked about this too. When we were talking about how it's so important to stay on top of your activation.
Oh man, absolutely. I carry a cross daily. I do my activation daily. For me, I have to. So for sure.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you experience like little nagging tweaks here and there, whether it's because you've been standing on your feet 12 hours a day training people, and you can tell something's a little bit off. How important has kind of staying on top of activation for your body been? Not just the workout, which is important, but like if something gets a little bit off, maybe doing like a few 90-degree eccentric isometric lunges or some squat holds or some single leg RDLs to loosen things up. Explain a little bit more about how you've implemented that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the nose. It's like I think the normal person, we're moving all day long. We're coaching people. Then we go get our own workout in. It's super vital when you're just standing, or maybe you're leaning onto one hip because sometimes we have bad habits of compensating on one side. Like to your point, to activate, to make sure all the muscles are relaxed. In my case, my low back at times, if I get off kilter, I've got to lock that back in. So if I feel something, I'm doing it beforehand. Because I've done it long enough where I'm like, let me just make sure I'm good. Because I don't want to feel what it's like to, have injuries or sciatica or, a shocking pain. I don't want any of that. So my thing is like you said, I've been done it so many years that now it's a matter of I really need to keep this going and lock my form in more detail.
Exactly. It's that being proactive, which
that's right.
I have to do, you have to do. I mean, we all have to do because it's so easy for things to start spiraling out of control with your body. It's like, oh, hips just a little bit off, oh, I'll be fine. Then you go pick up a weight off the floor, and you're already compensating, and it just gets worse. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you might,
tweak something
or tear something or herniate a disc. It's like that daily activation, just staying on top of your body when it feels off, doing a few reps here and there to get things more locked in. It prevents larger injuries from happening, and it keeps your body healthy so that when you do actually go work out, your body's ready to go. So it's critical especially for me. I'm almost 40 now, and if I don't do that, my body is an absolute train wreck. So I have to stay on top of that.
Nice.
Now, we don't do a lot of corrective exercises. Okay, we might think of certain things as corrective in nature, but we don't do a lot of mobility drills, or we have to go do this special exercise to fix this.
You give me more of the movements than I already do.
Exactly.
To loosen muscles.
We exercise correctly.
Correct.
That is our corrective exercise. We do the basics. We do the foundations, and that's what heals the body.
That's a great point, because so many times when people do their stuff, they're trying to feel better, they're trying to perform better, etc. When it comes to the movements and the basic movement patterns and stuff like that, it's like, oh, well, that's not working. I'm going to go do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then they get into a lot of just crazy stuff.
That's right.
And it's like, that's a great point. It's like, well, most of the time, the corrective exercise is doing that basic one correctly. Right. Then we can advance into all that other stuff.
That's right.
You got what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's, I think that's a great thing to mention. That's a great point.
Because when you come to me and said, hey, something's a little bit off, I don't give you a magic, unique exercise you've never heard of or some crazy. It's like, no, go do a lunge, lock it in. And what I do help you with is hey, something's just barely off with your form of the basics.
Get your knee in.
Just said.
Yeah, get your,
exactly.
That's your corrective exercise.
That's the corrective exercise.
Correcting that
exactly.
exercise.
And the most basic fundamental version. Then all the advanced variations that fall under that, you'll be able to nail them because you've already grooved the appropriate, neural pathways in the motor program. So,
I want to make if you don't mind, I want to make a point which really just kind of drives home, what you guys do with the corrective exercises with the 90-degree protocol. I'm 29 years old, and I definitely, as a pro athlete, ex-pro athlete, still have that competitive drive in me. I think we all do. You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those where I don't want to stop lifting the weight I was lifting, when I was 21.
Exactly.
So this is the only training that's allowed me to keep doing that. The minute I start to break 90-degree protocol and don't have my form locked in, I hurt myself.
Yeah.
Because I think I can just jump straight to what I used to do, and the warm-up, like you said, is important. The firing things that we're doing, activation before we start. But as you said, the protocol you gave me for my pro day, I don't know if you remember this, you're giving me glute bridge. You're giving me single leg RDL.
Single leg RDLs, lunge holds,
you're giving me lunge holds.
Exactly.
Yeah. Explosion jumps, standing, it's very basic.
Exactly.
But the body, you gave me a great analogy that stuck with me, was it's almost like you're ramping the RPMs up on a car. Remember, like we talked about with the eccentric, isometric, the overload. And it's like, you got to get your legs warmed up. People thought I was probably ridiculous. I'm doing this I'm doing the overcoming isometrics before I do my vertical jump. And they're like, who is this dude slamming this 225 against the squat bar? And I'm under the bar. They're like, this guy is what is he? He's out of this world. And I jumped the highest I've ever jumped. I thought it's 38.
That's awesome.
So it's like these are things that I've been able to put to the test. And you and I would have had that conversation. Come back had I done 8 reps of bench and I ran a forever 40. But it's allowed me to be the top of my game, the best. And at 29, I'm still able to do the same movements. And like you said, be a little bit more meticulous and detailed about my form. And I've been able to perform the exact same.
Speaking of the basics, because we keep hammering this idea that it's what keeps you healthy, it keeps you performing at a high level. But one thing that I think I'm known a little bit for in the industry is that not only myself, but my athletes can do some pretty advanced, crazy exercises that most people look at, including most high-level lifters look at, and they're like, how in the world do you guys do these exercises with such perfect form, with such great stability? And you've been able to do some pretty impressive exercises over the years. You're one of the few guys that's been able to do like the bottoms up double
45
press. 45s. I mean, that's so tough because it's way harder than kettlebells. Because it's twice as high. It's way thinner. It wants to torque out of your hand more. You've done some of the craziest hanging band exercises, some of the single leg offset movements. I mean, you've just tried. You've been part of the training methods for so long. I think you've tasted just about every one of those unique variations. But what have you done that's allowed you to do that? Because I want you to speak to this, because a lot of people think we just focus on mastering those crazy variations. But I'll let you take that away.
I mean, you said it right there, which is there wasn't 2,000 reps of doing this and then, all right, Joel, put the camera on.
Yeah.
We went over, again, you're going to keep hearing this, basics.
Exactly.
Locking the form in, locking the posture in. And then we were like, hey, Julian, why don't you try this? Yeah. And it was literally that organic every time we tried. And I'm like, I mean, you and I have this like inside joke that we've done for like 10 years. I'm like, Joel, check this out. Don't we? And I'll grab a bar and I'll like put it into, this, overhead press. Position, exactly. Kind of this javelin position.
Right.
Hold one leg up, put a kettlebell on my left leg.
Right.
And then, do some reps. Exactly. And he's like, that's good. And I'm like, Joel, it was a joke, Joel. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's like, he finds the science in it because he knows that the offset is going to set you right. Mm-hmm. And that's the good.
Right.
But you're having to lock your core, and this is your house.
Exactly.
Your core and your spine, and that's what you focus on more than anything. You're like, your back's got to be locked in, posture again, feet. And the overhead press, I thought about that after we had conversation, early a little bit, which was like, I just asked more questions. I think that's, and with playing receiver, my grip strength and my wrist, strength was a little bit stronger, but it was more of like, Joel, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
It
like,
falls. I get it up
to the foundation,
and then go back to the foundation. And it only took 2 or 3 tries, and I got it. But it was about slowing it down, getting it up overhead, bringing it down, all in that same firing pattern you need it to be. If I just try to shoot it up there, I've had times I try to fire it up there too quick, and it dumps.
Well, something like that, there can be no compensation patterns. You can't have any imbalances if there's any deviations in form. And if you go past 90 degrees, inevitably you're going to compensate. You're going to have energy leaks. You're going to have to have some level of misalignment. You're going to have to let your spine go. And that's all it takes for something like those bottoms up exercises or the hanging band ones. You give just that much, you're losing it. So, you practicing the perfect form with 90 degrees, those eccentric isometrics with 20-pound dumbbells, then 30s, then 40s, 50s, 60s. And you grab the 45-pound plates. It's like, oh, man, I've practiced this so many times. I've grooved perfect mechanics into my nervous system. This is just another variation of that. And I've seen that. You've seen that with your own body, with your clients. It's a repeat. Right. And we do that for all the big movement patterns. I think the last point, this one, people like to go after these methods and say that it's just cheating, and that the reason that we do it is because it's easier. And it's like, oh, Joel, you just have your clients do this, and you do the 90-degree method because it's just an easy way to lift more weight, and you guys don't like to put a lot of effort into it. But I strongly disagree and respectively disagree. But what do you think of that comment, having been part of the 90-degree methods?
I may get some hate for this, but people are just misinformed. You know what I'm saying? Just ill-informed. They really are. I mean, if you tried it, if you've really put time and effort to do the 90
give it an honest try.
Give it an honest try. And you and I had the conversation, about you doing kind of a compare and contrast with,
when I did Zach Tielender's program.
Right.
The deep squat program, and he did my 90.
That's right. Yeah. And, ironically, there was no reports back to you.
There
about
were
the benefits. Was there, very small.
Very small, but I don't know. I mean, I'm taking his word for it.
Sure,
but,
sure. But it's one of those where you don't want to say it, Joel, but I will, because I've been a product of this environment that ATG or going too far range of motion wise that's not meant to. The analogy I've always been given is your muscles are like a guitar string. And if you continue to stretch that string out or keep strumming that deal hard, those are loose.
Yeah, they're going to.
And then when it's time to accelerate and when it's time to really put power into it, they snap. Yep. So there has to be some sort of there has to be some sort of tightness to the muscle.
Yes.
Otherwise, and that's what you
relationship which you've learned about in kinesiology, and that stiffness.
That's right.
It's a great analogy.
You don't want to lose that. Yeah.
And so I have seen the most flexible, the folks who spend hours stretching and sitting there and making sure they do this after, they have more injuries than I've ever had.
And I think the three of us have done some of that previously in our life.
Absolutely.
So we've known.
So
I know I have.
Seen it,
I've seen the negative effects, how it's played out in me, my body, my performance. So it's not like we haven't experienced that.
Yeah.
We are products of experiencing that and then giving it
Realizing
an honest try.
this is not it.
And seeing where it has taken us in our bodies, in our performance, whatever we're doing.
Well, that's what I always try to reiterate on social media. It's like, I've tried your methods. We've tried
Your
deep
methods.
I have.
methods, deep range of motion,
We
full range
certainly
of
have.
motion. Now you guys
Try
the 90-degree method and see how your body feels. And look, if at the end of the day, it's not for them, no harm, no foul. But I can almost guarantee you, if somebody gives it an honest, legitimate try without any preconceived ideas or trying to, fit some agenda of proving me wrong or whatever, and actually go in with an open mind, I think at the end of the day, most people are going to find the methods useful. It has nothing to do with even my methods. It's the science. This is the science of the human body. It's the stuff you've learned in kinesiology school. It's